Learning English can sometimes feel like a big puzzle, with words that seem hard to understand and sentences that just don't make sense. But what if learning could be fun? What if there was a way to enjoy the process while getting better at English? In this story, we meet Stephen, a boy who once found English confusing and difficult. But everything changed when he discovered the magic of reading stories. Follow Stephen's journey as he learns how stories can not only improve his language skills, but also make learning feel like an exciting adventure. Ready to join him? Let's begin. Stephen's English adventure, learning through stories. Stephen was a young boy who lived in a small town with his parents. He had a good group of friends, and they loved to play outside. However, Stephen had one big problem. He could not learn English well. Every time he tried to study, the words in his books looked strange. The sentences were long and hard to understand. English made him feel confused and he often became frustrated. In class, when it was time to read aloud, Stephen felt nervous. His friends could easily read and understand the text, but Stephen struggled. His classmates would finish quickly, while he had to pause and think for a long time. The teacher would ask him to continue, but he was afraid he would make a mistake. Sometimes, his friends would laugh, and that made Stephen feel embarrassed. At home, Stephen tried to study, but it didn't get any easier. He tried to memorize words, but they never stayed in his mind. Whenever he looked at a new word, it felt like he was seeing it for the first time. The more he studied, the more discouraged he became. One day, after school, Stephen was feeling especially down. He walked slowly home, thinking about how hard learning English was for him. When he reached his house, his father noticed that something was wrong. "What's wrong, Stephen? Why do you look sad?" his father asked. Stephen sighed deeply. "I just can't learn English. The words are too difficult, and the sentences are too long. I feel like I am always falling behind," he said. His father thought for a moment, then smiled kindly. "You know, Stephen, learning English doesn't have to be so hard. There is a fun way to learn. Have you ever tried reading stories? Stories can make learning easier, and they can help you understand new words without even trying." Stephen was surprised. "Stories? How can stories help me learn English?" he wondered. His father explained, "Stories are full of interesting words and exciting situations. When you read stories, you see how words are used in real life. You can learn new words while enjoying the story. I think you should give it a try. Why don't we find a storybook together?" Stephen felt curious. Maybe reading stories was the answer he had been looking for. He decided to trust his father and give it a try. The next day, Stephen and his father went to the bookstore. They walked down the aisles, looking at the books. The store was not very big, but it had a lot of books. Stephen did not know which book to choose. He wanted to find something that would be easy for him to understand. His father looked around and said, "Let's find a book that has simple words. We want something that will help you enjoy reading without getting frustrated." They found a book called The Adventures of Max. It had a bright cover with a picture of a boy named Max standing in a magical forest. Stephen liked the cover right away. "Let's take this one," his father said. "This book looks fun, and I think you will enjoy reading it." At home, Stephen opened the book and started reading. The first page was easy to understand. The sentences were short and simple. The story was about Max, a brave boy who lived in a magical forest. Max had many adventures. He met strange creatures, helped animals in need, and explored new places. Stephen liked the story. It was exciting, and the words were easy to follow. He didn't feel nervous while reading it. Every time he came across a new word, he asked his father about it. His father explained the word and used it in a sentence so Stephen could understand. Stephen wrote the new words in his notebook and reviewed them every day. Slowly, he started remembering them. After reading The Adventures of Max, Stephen felt more confident. He wanted to read more. Every day after school, he would sit in his room with a book. He found another storybook called The Brave Little Fox and started reading it. This book was about a little fox who went on an adventure to find his lost family. Stephen loved the story because it was full of action and good lessons. Stephen began reading out loud to practice his pronunciation. He wanted to say the words correctly. At first, he felt shy to speak, but after a while, he felt more comfortable. His father was always there to listen and help. When Stephen didn't understand something, his father explained it in a simple way. Soon, Stephen could read without stopping to ask questions. He could read longer sentences, and he understood them better. Stephen's reading habit grew stronger every day. He started reading books for an hour every evening. It became something he looked forward to. He loved learning new words. When he saw new words in other places, like on signs or in advertisements, he could recognize them. His vocabulary was growing, and he was becoming more confident. One Saturday, Stephen's father took him to the library. Stephen had never been to a library before, so he was very excited. The library was big and filled with books of all kinds. There were books about animals, history, and even books about space. Stephen felt like he was in a magical place. They walked to a section of the library called Easy Readers. These were books with simple stories and easy words for young learners. Stephen picked out a book called The Magic Tree. It was about a tree that could talk and grant wishes. The story was fun, and the words were not too difficult. Stephen loved it. After that, Stephen went to the library every week. He borrowed books and read them at home. He spent hours in the library, looking for new books. Each book was like a new adventure. The more he read, the easier it became. Soon, Stephen was reading books that were a little more difficult than before. He was proud of how far he had come. Stephen's friends noticed how well he was doing in English. They saw how much he enjoyed reading. One day, one of his friends asked, "Stephen, how do you learn English so quickly? You know so many words now." Stephen smiled and said, "I read stories." When you read stories, you learn new words without even thinking about it. It is fun, and it helps you get better at English. You should try it too. The next weekend, Stephen's friends came with him to the library. They all picked out books and started reading. They spent the afternoon reading together, talking about the stories, and helping each other with new words. Stephen was happy to share his love for reading with his friends. It felt good to learn together. One day, Stephen's teacher announced a class competition. Each student would have to choose a story and tell it to the class. Stephen was excited. He knew exactly which story he wanted to tell. It was The Brave Little Fox. He had read it many times, and he loved the story. He practiced reading it out loud every day. He wanted to tell the story as best as he could. On the day of the competition, Stephen stood in front of the class. He was nervous at first, but then he remembered how much he enjoyed the story. He took a deep breath and started telling the story. He spoke slowly and clearly. He described the little fox and his adventure. The class listened quietly. When Stephen finished, everyone clapped. Stephen's teacher said, "That was a wonderful story, Stephen. You told it so well. Keep reading, and you will get even better at English." Stephen's teacher said, "That was a wonderful story, Stephen. You told it so well. Keep reading, and you will get even better at English." After the competition, Stephen felt inspired. He wanted to write his own story. He thought about a boy who went on an adventure to find a treasure. He took out a notebook and started writing. At first, it was difficult, but then he remembered the stories he had read. He used the words he had learned and wrote his own adventure. When Stephen finished writing his story, he showed it to his father. His father read it and said, "This is a great story, Stephen. You have used many good words, and your story is exciting. I am proud of you." Stephen was proud too. He had written his own story, and he knew that he could keep improving by reading and writing. Now, Stephen tells everyone that reading stories is the best way to learn English. He has learned so many new words from stories. He has also learned how to write his own stories. Stories have helped him become more confident and improve his English skills. They have made learning fun. Stephen's story shows that anyone can learn English if they find a way that works for them. For Stephen, that way was through reading stories. He learned that with patience, practice, and the love of stories, he could achieve anything he set his mind to. Thank you for watching Stephen's journey to learn English through stories. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with your friends. Let's keep learning together.